Mr. Cook, your testimony references numerous studies that all conclude that the optimal lunar exploration mission architecture features 2 SLS launches, since it decreases the number of launches necessary, thereby increasing mission success, and it allows for a wider lander with a lower center of gravity that is more stable when landing. NASA, however, is pursuing a plan that requires multiple launches on less capable rockets, more in-space docking, and a narrower lander. Based on decades of trade studies, does this make any sense to you, and is NASA relying on commercial launch vehicles because they don't believe that they will have 2 SLSs available by 2024?
My short answer is no, it doesn't make sense to me. When you divide up the lander, there's an ascent vehicle and descent vehicle. It even has to be fueled at the gateway by launching on smaller vehicles. It constrains the payload diameter as well, so it limits the size of the lander. These things, for one, it can cause the lander to get taller, which then makes it less stable on a slope on a lunar surface. Right. But it also limits what you can fly on it. Right now, the requirements look to be based on entirely on an ascent vehicle for the crew. However, if you do the work to lay out the long-term architecture and what you're actually going to achieve on the moon, it'll have to transport other things like a habitat, potentially, or rovers, and without those requirements, when ending up with a small lander, you may not be able to build the capability that you need to be sustainable.
Okay, thank you. And also, Mr. Cook, the Orion crew vehicle and the European service module are less capable than the Apollo command module and service module because the European service module is based on the automated transfer vehicle that provided cargo to the ISS. This led NASA to propose a transfer vehicle in their concept of operations for a moon landing. The NASA Aerospace Safety Advisory Panel recently stated that the ESM propulsion system continues to raise issues that affect both safety and schedule. Why doesn't NASA just ensure that the European service module meets the requirement of enabling a crewed lunar landing rather than starting an entirely new development?
The service module is obviously key to the architecture in terms of getting the crew where they need to go. The distribution of where propulsion goes in the fuel needs to be worked out. I believe NASA needs to really own the lunar landing and get the architecture together to do it most effectively.
Okay. And then, Mr. Bowersox, what does NASA need to do regarding spacesuits to enable a crewed landing in 2024? Does NASA plan to change the plans that they laid out in the spacesuit plan delivered to Congress a few years ago?
Well, our current plan is to have the suit developed at the Johnson Space Center. There's been a lot of work that's been going on there for years and years since I was an astronaut. And we're going to build on that work to have JSC manage a program and develop a lunar suit for us. Okay,
great. And then one other question for you. Recently, we heard of potential issues with the delivery of the Orion spacecraft to Plumbrook for testing. Apparently, the margins for the Super Guppy, the airplane that is planned to transport the spacecraft, could be insufficient to handle a potential emergency landing based on the weight of Orion and the container that it's shipped in. What is the status of this review? And will Orion make it to Plumbrook on schedule? And will NASA have to use the Pegasus barge and go through the St. Lawrence Seaway to be potentially iced in over the wintertime? And if so, would this impact the use of the Pegasus barge for transporting the core stage to Stennis this winter? I know that's several questions wrapped up, but if you can answer those, I'm running out of time.
So you sort of hit all the issues and all everything we're working. But the bottom line is the latest news is we're very hopeful that the Guppy is going to work out. Our most likely backups options would be other aircraft options. For example, the Beluga aircraft that they have over in Europe right now would require some extra time, but we still think we'd be ready for the launch of Artemis 1 that we're sort of forecasting.
Okay, so we don't have to deal with ice, an iced-in St. Lawrence
No,
Seaway then, huh?
no, sir, we were all worried about that too, but we think we're going to be okay.
All right, thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Babin.